The sprawling glass mansion sat in silence, surrounded by manicured hedges and walls too high to let the real world peek in. Inside, everything gleamed. Polished floors reflected the soft glow of chandeliers, and not a single toy lay out of place, because no one really played here. Sebastian Hales stood in the dimly lit hallway of his estate, his luggage in hand. His overseas business trip had ended 2 days early due to a canceled deal, but he hadn't told anyone he was coming home. Not his staff, not the housekeeper, not even the security team. He wanted to walk into his home unnoticed, for once. More truthfully, he wasn't ready to face his twins yet. It had been a year since Emily's death. A year since she gave birth to Leo and Liana, then slipped away before ever holding them. The twins had survived. She hadn't. Since then, Sebastian had buried himself in work. He'd built tech companies, closed billion-dollar mergers, and expanded into Asia. But he hadn't changed a diaper. He hadn't held his children while they cried in the night. He hired people to do that. Emotionally, he told himself it was safer that way. He dropped his briefcase quietly and walked toward the nursery, guided by faint sounds. The mansion was unusually quiet. Normally, the hum of machines, the occasional beep of devices, or the distant clink of the housekeeper's routine echoed through the space. But not tonight. And then he heard it. A soft melody sung in a woman's voice. Not in English. Spanish. Sebastian frowned. He followed the lullaby to the nursery, then paused. The door wasn't fully shut. He nudged it open silently and froze at the sight before him. The lights were dimmed. A small lamp glowed in the corner. The white noise machine was off. On the plush nursery rug, Lena, the maid he barely remembered hiring 6 months ago, sat cross-legged on the floor. Her shoes were off, and her hair, usually tied in a tight braid, was loosely falling across her shoulders. She wore a soft beige cardigan, now stained with baby formula, and her head leaned slightly to the side as she sang. Nestled against her chest, both babies lay sleeping, one in each arm. Leo's chubby hand clutched her sweater, while Liana's cheek was pressed against her heartbeat. Sebastian blinked. He didn't understand. She cradled them like a mother, rocked them slowly, sang to them with eyes closed. She wasn't just minding them, she was loving them. He stepped in abruptly. "What do you think you're doing?" Lena gasped softly, eyes flying open. She didn't move. Her arms tightened instinctively around the babies as if to shield them. Leo stirred but didn't wake. Liana whimpered in her sleep and snuggled deeper into Lena's warmth. "I said, 'What are you doing?' he repeated, voice lower but still sharp. "I was putting them to sleep," she whispered, gently rocking side to side. "They had a rough day." "You're the maid. That's not your job," he said coldly. "Where's the nanny?" "Off shift," Lena replied quietly. She left at 6. No one else came. They were crying. Sebastian looked around. Bottles had been washed and laid out. Fresh blankets were folded on the rocking chair. On the playmat beside her, soft toys sat in a neat circle. The babies wore matching hand-knit sweaters with their initials, LL, stitched on the sleeves. He hadn't approved of these. "They cried for 2 hours, Lena added. "They only stopped when I held them." He clenched his jaw. "Why didn't you call me?" "I did." No one answered. Of course he hadn't answered. He'd been on a flight or in a meeting or both. Still, the sight before him felt like a betrayal. Not because Lena had done anything wrong, but because she'd stepped into a role he couldn't bring himself to fill. "Put them in their cribs," he said tightly. "I'll take it from here." Lena hesitated. She glanced down at the sleeping twins, lips pressed together. "They'll wake up if I move them now." Sebastian walked over, gently reaching for Leo. The baby twitched at his touch and within seconds began to whimper, softly at first, then louder. Liana's eyes fluttered open, confused and frightened, her bottom lip trembling. "No. Shh," Lena soothed quickly, cradling them back. "It's okay. You're safe. Just sleep, mi cielo." Her voice was like water over stones. Sebastian stepped back, arms dropping to his sides. His presence unsettled the twins. But with Lena, they quieted. "Why do they call you Mama Lena?" he asked almost accusingly. She didn't flinch. "I never told them to. They started doing it on their own." His throat tightened. The babies had reached for someone else, called her Mama. Not out of confusion, but need. For a moment, Sebastian forgot how to speak. The room was filled with the scent of lavender lotion and baby powder. Leo's soft breathing slowed. Liana's eyelids fluttered shut once more. Lena continued humming. The old lullaby. "Where did you learn that song?" he asked finally, voice quieter. Lena's eyes remained on the children. "A woman sang it to me once when I was very little. I never forgot it." "Who?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked up at him, calm, steady, someone kind. Sebastian didn't like riddles. He didn't like being emotionally cornered. And yet here he was, standing in his own house, feeling like the outsider in a moment of maternal intimacy. He turned toward the door. "We'll talk tomorrow. This isn't appropriate." "Yes, sir," Lena said softly. He paused before stepping out. "And no more handmade sweaters." Lena didn't respond. She simply pulled the tiny blankets up over the babies, kissed each forehead, and resumed her lullaby. Outside, Sebastian leaned against the hallway wall, breathing out slowly. He wasn't angry. Not really. He was shaken. For the first time in a year, his home didn't feel silent. It felt like someone had brought life back into it. Sebastian Hales stood in the doorway of the nursery, his fingers gripping the handle as though it were the only thing keeping him anchored to reality. The soft glow of the baby monitor lit his face with a pale, unnatural light. He hadn't planned on coming home early. It was supposed to be another weekend spent at the office, finalizing deals and ignoring the nagging feeling that he was missing something in the house he had built for a family that no longer existed. But today, something had drawn him back. He hadn't expected to find what he had. Lena was still in the nursery, sitting on the floor with Leo and Liana in her arms. They were both asleep now, peacefully nestled in her embrace. Sebastian's heart clenched at the sight. Not from jealousy or anger, but from an unfamiliar emotion, a pang of regret. For a moment, he simply watched. She rocked them gently, her humming almost inaudible over the sound of the white noise machine. Her calm presence in the room was like an anchor, keeping everything in place while he drifted further into the sea of uncertainty. Lena wasn't just the maid. She wasn't just a temporary employee taking care of the twins while he wasn't there. She was something else. She was present in a way that Sebastian couldn't seem to be. His footsteps creaked on the floorboards, breaking the fragile stillness. Lena's eyes flicked up as he entered, and she quickly set Leo down in the crib, brushing his tiny curls back before gently moving to place Liana beside him. "I told you I'd take care of them," Sebastian said quietly, his voice sharper than he intended. "I don't need you stepping in like that, you're just the maid." Lena paused, her back still turned to him as she smoothed the blankets over the twins. Her hands trembled for a moment, but she didn't look at him, didn't react to the harshness of his words. "I wasn't trying to replace you," she said quietly. "I was just doing what they needed." Sebastian's throat tightened. He didn't want to admit it, but the truth was staring him in the face. Lena had done what he hadn't been able to. She had done the one thing that he couldn't. She had given the twins the love and attention they needed, the thing he'd been too afraid to provide. "I'm their father," he muttered, though even he could hear the hollow sound of his words. "I'm supposed to be the one who gives them that. I don't need a stranger doing it for me." Her back was still turned, but he could see her shoulders slump under the weight of his words. After a long, painful silence, Lena spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "They need more than just a father, Sebastian. They need someone to love them, someone to hold them when they cry, someone to make them feel safe." And right now, that's not you. Sebastian recoiled at her words as though she had slapped him. For a moment, he stood frozen, trying to digest the sharp sting of truth that she had just delivered. "I'm doing my best," he finally managed to say, though it sounded more like a plea than a statement. "I'm trying to give them everything they need. I'm just busy?" Lena finished for him, turning around to face him at last. Her expression was calm, but there was a sadness in her eyes, a kind of resigned understanding that Sebastian wasn't sure he was ready to face. "Sebastian, your kids aren't going to remember the money, or the cars, or the mansions. They're going to remember the way you were with them. They're going to remember whether or not you were there when they needed you." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He had always thought that providing for his children meant giving them everything material he could: expensive clothes, lavish trips, a luxurious home. But now, standing in the nursery with Lena's gentle gaze piercing through him, he realized how far he had gone wrong. He had never been there emotionally, not for his wife, not for his children. He had thought that if he stayed busy enough, he wouldn't have to feel the ache of loss. But now, that ache was growing in him, deeper than he'd ever allowed it to before. The twins needed something he hadn't known how to give them: a father's warmth, a steady hand, a voice that didn't hide behind corporate deals and expensive distractions. "You're right," he said quietly, his voice barely a whisper. The words tasted foreign in his mouth, but they needed to be said. "I've been a terrible father." Lena didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her silence was all the acknowledgement he needed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The soft sound of Leo and Liana's breathing was the only thing filling the space between them. In that silence, Sebastian began to understand something he had been avoiding for so long. He had been pushing everyone away, but he couldn't keep doing it. Not with his children. Not with Lena, who, despite her position, had shown him a side of himself he had long forgotten. "I don't know how to be the father they need," he admitted, his voice hoarse. "I'm not sure I know how to do this." Lena finally stepped closer, her presence like a gentle breeze, comforting without being overbearing. "You don't have to do it all alone," she said softly. "You can learn. I can help. But you have to let me in, Sebastian. You have to let them in." His eyes met hers, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something shift inside him. The walls he had built around his heart, the ones he had used to shield himself from the pain of losing Emily, began to crumble. He hadn't been letting anyone in, not his children, not even himself. But maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe he could still learn how to be a father. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as lost as he thought. "I'll try," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Lena gave him a small, understanding smile, one that spoke more than words ever could. She didn't expect perfection. She didn't expect him to change overnight, but for the first time, he was willing to try. And that, she knew, was enough. Days passed and the cold rhythm of the Hales estate began to shift. It started small, Sebastian Hales arriving home early instead of staying out past midnight. Then came the sound of his voice trying to read a bedtime story, halting, unsure, but trying. The staff noticed the change. Fewer commands, more presence, less distance. But no one noticed more than Lena. She watched Sebastian from afar, his awkwardness with the twins slowly giving way to gentle touches and quieter moments. She never said anything, never interfered, but she saw how Leo gripped his father's tie one morning instead of pulling away, and how Liana fell asleep on his chest during an afternoon nap on the couch. Lena had placed a blanket over them and stepped away, her heart quietly full. Still, a question lingered in Sebastian's mind like a splinter. How did Lena know the lullaby Emily used to sing? He hadn't let it go. One afternoon, while the twins were asleep, Sebastian found himself standing in the old piano room, a space frozen in time since Emily's death. The room still smelled faintly of lavender and old books. Framed photographs lined the shelves, including one of Emily volunteering at a children's center during college. He stared at it, and then he saw her. In the corner of the photo, mostly hidden behind other children, was a familiar young girl with large eyes, dark braids, and a shy smile. Lena. He pulled the photo from the frame with trembling fingers. His breath caught. It couldn't be coincidence. Moments later, Sebastian was in his office, rifling through files, making phone calls. He called the center where Emily had volunteered. After some digging, they confirmed it. Lena Alvarez had been part of their foster care program 20 years ago. Emily had known her. He sat in silence for a long time, the truth swelling inside him like a wave. Emily hadn't just sung a lullaby to a child in passing. She'd connected with Lena, helped her, inspired her, and now that same little girl was here, caring for their children. That night, Sebastian stood in the doorway of the nursery once again, watching Lena as she sat beside the crib humming to the twins. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked softly. Lena turned, startled. "Tell you what?" "That you knew Emily." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I wasn't sure if it mattered anymore." "It matters to me," he said, stepping inside. She stood now, her hands nervously clasped in front of her. "She was the only person who ever made me feel seen," Lena admitted, voice trembling. "When I was 10, she came to my orphanage every week. She brought books, taught us songs. She told me I was smart, that I mattered. No one had ever said that to me before." Sebastian listened, something tight in his chest, slowly unraveling. "She gave me hope," Lena continued, her eyes glassy with memory. "I never forgot her. I didn't know she married you until I saw your name on the job listing. And when I saw Leo and Liana, I don't know. I felt like I was meant to protect them. Maybe it was my way of holding on to her." He sat in the rocking chair, stunned. "You were part of her life. Long before I was." "I never planned to tell you," she said. "I didn't want you to think I had an agenda. I just wanted to give your children what she gave me." Silence fell between them. But it was not the cold silence that used to fill the house. It was warm, reflective, full of understanding. Sebastian looked at the twins, peaceful, safe, sleeping side by side. "I've been trying to survive, not realizing they were barely surviving without me." "You were grieving," Lena said gently. "It's not weakness to hurt. It's human." He looked up at her, really looked for the first time without the lens of status or staff. She was strong in quiet ways. She had walked into a home built of sorrow and breathed life back into it. "You changed this house," he murmured. "You changed me." She smiled softly, brushing a curl from Liana's forehead. "They changed me too. Lena, Emily. She would have loved you, you know." Lena's eyes filled with emotion. "I think she already did." They stood in silence, watching the twins sleep. Then Lena turned to go, but Sebastian reached for her hand. "Lena." She looked back. "I don't want you to be just the maid anymore." Her brow furrowed. "Then, what do you want me to be?" He stepped closer, his voice thick. "Family." 6 months later, the Hales estate was no longer silent. Laughter echoed down its marble halls. Toys littered the floor. The once pristine living room now hosted a playpen, building blocks, and a faint scent of baby wipes and cinnamon cookies. Sebastian sat on the back patio, holding Liana as Leo toddled across the grass. Lena sat beside him, dressed in an elegant, flowing summer dress. They weren't rushing things. No proposals. No dramatic declarations. Just a shared life. A rebuilt home. The twins called her Mama Lena without hesitation now. But recently, Leo had started calling Sebastian Papa again, for the first time since learning to speak. Sebastian looked over at Lena, who smiled and leaned into him. The wind brushed her hair gently as she laughed at something Leo did, and Sebastian found himself blinking back tears. Grief still visited, but love lived here now. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to Lena's temple. "Thank you for coming into our lives." She smiled up at him. "Emily brought me here. But you're the one who let me stay." Together, they watched their children, 2 one-year-olds and a love that had begun with lullabies and grown into something lasting. A second chance. A family. 1 year after their wedding, the nursery had long outgrown its soft pastels and rattles. Now the twins, Leo and Liana, 2 years old and full of energy, raced down the hallway, giggling as they clutched matching stuffed bears. Their tiny feet slapped against the hardwood floors as they played their favorite game, running from Daddy before bedtime. Sebastian Hales watched from the doorway, arms folded, pretending to look stern. He asked with mock seriousness who said they could stay up past bedtime. The twins squealed in unison and bolted into the living room. Lena walked in just behind him, barefoot and glowing, not just from the warmth of the home they had built together, but from the gentle roundness beneath her soft robe. Her hand rested on her growing baby bump. She teased him softly, nudging him, saying their kids didn't listen to anyone. He turned to her and smiled, not the cold, distracted smile he used to wear, the one that hid pain and distance. This one was full of peace and love, and the quiet joy of someone who had finally stopped running from his own heart. He said they took after her and kissed her forehead. The twins poked their heads from behind the couch, with Leo shouting for Daddy to come get them, laughter bubbling from his chest. Liana chimed in with a mischievous grin, saying Daddy was too slow. Sebastian laughed, a sound that had once been rare in this house, now familiar and frequent. He dropped to the floor and crawled after them, growling like a lion, making both toddlers squeal and fall into a pile of giggles. Lena stood in the doorway, watching the scene unfold with a heart so full it ached. A year ago, this house had been a place of silence, shadows, and loss. Now it echoed with bedtime songs, pancake mornings, and little feet climbing into bed at dawn. There were fingerprints on the glass walls and crayon marks on the fridge, and Sebastian wouldn't change a thing. Later that night, when the twins were finally asleep and the house had gone still, Sebastian pulled Lena close on the couch. His hand rested gently over her belly. He asked if she thought the baby would be as wild as the twins. Lena, her head on his shoulder, grinned sleepily and said probably worse. He chuckled and said they'd survive. She whispered that he didn't just survive. He became everything they needed, everything she needed. His throat tightened. He pressed a kiss to her hair and said she gave him that chance. She made this home. Outside, the night wrapped the house in quiet. But inside, in the warmth of that living room, Sebastian Hales, once lost, once hollow, held everything he never knew he wanted. Family, laughter, love. A second chance that had quietly, steadily become the best chapter of his life. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel. Your love, comments, and shares mean everything to me. Grateful for each of you. Let's keep growing together. With love from Whispers.